We're going to talk about, we talked yesterday, if I remember correctly, that the police were going to bring Ruth Payne and Marina Oswald to police headquarters. Is that where we ended? Is that right?
Yes.
But prior to that, the neighbor, Lenny Mae Randall, came down and said, hey, my brother gave Lee Harvey Oswald a ride to work. And I went through that rigmarole, did I not, about when he picked him up on weekends, etc. Well, this is the testimony of Mrs. Payne. Okay? Now, I'm telling you this kind of in advance of when she actually gave it during the course of the timeline of the day, because it ties in with the story about Buell. Okay? So, this is what Ruth Payne told the police department. She said that on November 21st of 1963, she had returned home from shopping. Remember, it was a Thursday. And she told police that she was really surprised to see Lee and Marina on the lawn playing with their children, because she didn't expect him there until Fridays. He came unannounced. And she also stated that Marina was quite embarrassed because she really couldn't control Lee very well, right? She was very embarrassed that Lee was there unannounced and was there on a Thursday instead of a Friday, because he obviously had not gotten permission from Mrs. Payne to be there that many nights. And Marina didn't know how long. I mean, he was going to be staying. She knew he had to go to work the next day, but she was embarrassed. Mrs. Payne also stated, interesting enough, that on the night before the assassination on Thursday, November 21st, she went to her garage to look for some paint because she was going to paint some wooden blocks for her children to play with later. And when she went to her garage that evening, she noticed that the light was left on, meaning that someone had been in there prior. Well, she just assumed it was Lee Harvey Oswald looking for something, because where were most of his belongings? In the garage. He had a drill press in there and some other, some things from his army days and whatever. He had what they owned between him and Marina wouldn't fit in the tiny bedroom they were staying in. So he had everything in the garage. So she didn't think too much of it. She turned off the light and she was going to ask Oswald about it the next morning. Well, actually, she was going to ask him about it when she went back in the house, but he was already in bed, so she was going to ask him the next morning, why you left the light on. She also testified to the police that Lee Harvey Oswald was unusually quiet the night at dinner, and he went to bed earlier than he normally did. That's why she didn't get a chance to talk to him about the light being left on. But this is really important you write down, is that she told the police that Oswald left these 3 specific items in the bedroom before he left the next morning. Because she discovered these things after he had left in the bedroom. First thing he left, interestingly enough, was a majority of his money. All of his money except for the $13.87 they found on him, which means he left $170 on the dresser in the bedroom. That would be like $1,500 today. All he took with him was the $13.87 he had on him when they searched him. He left $170, or what would be about $1,500 today, on the dresser. He left a note for his wife Marina to take some of the money and go buy some new shoes for their oldest daughter, Junie, who was about 2. They had a newborn and a 2-year-old. So he left a note telling Marina to go buy some new shoes for the oldest daughter, Junie, with some of that money. And the third thing, and probably the most important thing he left, was what? Anybody want to guess what he left there in that cup? In a cup on the dresser? What? His wedding ring. Now, it was Russian custom that the ring was worn on the right hand if you were married in Russia, and the ring was never to come off your finger. So if he left a majority of his money, a note to buy the girl new shoes, which I would believe probably Marina could figure out on her own, and his wedding ring, what might that tell you? Not expecting to come back. That doesn't mean, like somebody in another class said, that he expected to die. I think he expected to do what he was going to do and disappear. And I'm going to tell you, because you kind of were on that yesterday with it. But that's odd that you would leave those things. But he no doubt did. Well, finally, Mrs. Payne told the police, I didn't get a chance to talk to Oswald about the light being on the next morning because he left before I got out of bed. Okay? So that's what she testified. So the reason I tell you that now is because it ties in with the fact that Buell was given Lee a ride, etc. Now, we go back to November 22nd, 1963, and it's 6:20 p.m. And Oswald's coming out for his second lineup. Okay, he's coming out for his second lineup at 6:20. Now, I didn't go into the really detailed stuff. I added some stuff. But there were other witnesses that you don't know their names, but there were other witnesses that saw Oswald shoot Tippit, that were in the vicinity that saw at least information that would lead to believe he shot him. So they brought those witnesses in to see if they could identify which one of those people was the guy they saw implicated in this shooting of Tippit. Every eyewitness said, that's the guy, and pointed to Oswald. Everyone. So because of that information that they received in that second lineup, at 7:10 p.m., what did they do? They charged Oswald with the murder of Tippit. So he has been officially charged with the murder of Tippit. He has not been officially charged with the murder of President Kennedy. That's still something Will Fritz needs to get done in his mind by midnight. But it is now 7:10, right? And Tippit's murder has been not solved, but at least the person has been charged with his murder after this evidence. To me, they had solid, ironclad evidence on this thing. Okay? They still don't have a connection to the rifle that Oswald killed the president. Well, at 7:15 p.m., Marina Oswald arrives at police headquarters with Ruth Payne. They both arrive at 7:15. Now, the rifle is on the third floor where they have been interrogating who? Oswald. Now, what do you think is filling the entire third floor besides police officers? No? No? The president's been killed, folks. Who's up there? The press. Just packed in there like sardines. Just packed in there like sardines. They are a real problem, and you'll see some footage on this. Well, do you think that Fritz wants to march Marina Oswald, the wife of the accused assassin, through all those media personnel on the third floor? No way. So what do? They put her in a holding room on the first floor, and they bring the rifle down to her, hoping that she will say, yeah, that's the rifle that my husband owns that was in the garage. Well, the media, you got to understand the media, they're wanting a nugget. So you don't have to write this part down, but a guy by the name of J.C. Day, who works for the Dallas Police Department, he holds the rifle over his head and marches it all the way through the third floor so they can get a look at it, then takes it on an elevator and they take the rifle and show it to Marina. Now, she doesn't know that much about guns, so she cannot clearly identify that this is the gun her husband owned. And some people, conspiracy theorists, sort of say, oh yeah, or whatever, she knew. I'm not sure she did, because I'm going to get to this, but she only, in my mind, saw the gun one time. One time. So I'm not sure you could see a gun one time and identify it. That's my opinion. But she says, I don't know that much about guns. I cannot positively tell you that this gun was the one that was in the garage. And I think if she could have, she would have. She was a Russian woman, scared to death in America, and I don't think there's any question if she thought that that was the gun, she'd have said so, but she just didn't know that much about it. Well, Captain Fritz leaves the room, and guess who shows up to Marina's aid, so to speak? Oswald's mother, Marguerite Oswald. And I'm telling you right now in a preface, this lady was crazy. This was, honestly, she was a crazy, insane woman. If you knew Lee Harvey Oswald's past from birth to here, you'd understand. But she was off her rock. But she shows up. Now, how she gets there is a really interesting story, because as I mentioned yesterday, I believe, did everybody have cars then? God, nobody had 3 cars like I do, or 4, whatever people have. You had none. So how'd you get anywhere? You took the bus, walked, got a ride. Well, Mrs. Oswald lived in Fort Worth, Texas. And so she wants to get a ride down to Dallas Police Headquarters because what she heard on the radio and TV, that her son has been arrested for shooting the president. So she wants to get there. So what she does is she calls a newspaper, the Fort Worth Telegram Star, which matters none. It's just a local newspaper in Fort Worth, the Fort Worth Telegram Star. And somebody answers the phone, just happened to be kind of a young reporter by the name of Bob Schieffer. And what does she ask Schieffer? Hey, she doesn't really explain herself. She says, hey, will someone down there give me a ride to Dallas Police Headquarters? Now, Bob Schieffer, I showed you a video on Bob Schieffer, I believe last year, when he talked about the State of the Union under Trump, and he was the one, I told him he was a gray-haired reporter. But he's Walter Cronkite, Brokaw, Tom Brokaw, Bob Schieffer, probably the 3 greatest journalists we've ever had. He still does a little bit of work. He's just a young newspaper reporter, not a television guy. Young newspaper reporter. And he answers the phone. And she says, can someone down there give me a ride to Dallas Police Headquarters? And he says, lady, we're not running a taxi service here. Don't you know the president's been shot? And she says, yes, I heard that on the radio and my son is the one they arrested. You think Bob Schieffer, what do you think he did next? He couldn't get to her house fast enough because he's a newspaper reporter. And he goes and picks her up, he takes her to Dallas Police Headquarters and sticks around to see if he can get any scoop. That's how she got there though. I have a baseball over here that's signed by Bob Schieffer. This is him in his younger days. He's much older now than Bob Schieffer. Now, who's the next one to show up in support of his relative? Brother Robert. Robert shows up. Now, Robert was a wonderful man. He worked in a brick factory. Can you imagine working and all of a sudden over the radio comes the news that your brother has been arrested for shooting the President of the United States? Is that a life changer? Yeah. So he comes there. And when he gets there, God, his mother is just off the wall. She's saying, shh, you know Lee works for the CIA. Shh, you know this room's being bugged. You know that, he's part of a government plot here. She's just off her rocker. And Robert gets very annoyed with her and tells her basically to shut up. But he's there also. So now police headquarters, you got Marina, Ruth Payne, Marguerite, and Robert. Well, at 7:40, Oswald goes to his 3rd lineup. And would they be bringing anybody in from the Tippit murder in this one? No, because they've already charged him. So you have the first possible witness to the Kennedy assassination that's brought in to try to point out Lee Harvey Oswald as the assassin of the president. The fellow they bring in is a guy by the name of Howard Brennan. And this is a weird story because earlier Brennan had stated to police after the assassination that during the first shot he looked up and to his right because he was standing below the Texas School Book Depository, and when he looked up and to his right he saw the man fire the 3rd shot on the 6th floor. He told police that. He did. And I think there's no question he did. So they brought him in to identify whether the guy he saw in the 6th floor window taking the 3rd shot was among those in the lineup. Now, if you would talk to Howard Brennan a year after the assassination, he would tell you that I think that was the guy, but he would not identify him. Why? He was probably pretty sure, but why didn't he positively identify the guy? No, he wasn't that. He was worried not about that guy. His safety of life. That's right. He didn't know what this amounted to. The president shot. Is there more people involved? If I put my finger on Lee Harvey Oswald and point him out, is somebody else involved going to not only kill me or maybe kill me and my family? So he was so scared, not knowing the situation, that he simply stated he could not be sure if that's the guy he saw in the 6th floor window. Well, things aren't looking good for Fritz, is it? So Fritz brings Oswald back in at 7:55 p.m. and talks to him a little more. And again, I just want you to listen to the conversation, so I'll help you out with the notes later. So at 7:55, Oswald goes back into Fritz's office. He's going to try to get wants to get a confession out of the guy, right? Wants to press it. So Fritz asks Oswald if he kept a rifle in Mrs. Payne's garage, and Oswald's response was, "No, I don't own a rifle." He's reminded by Fritz that, you know what, your wife told us that you kept a rifle in the garage wrapped in a blanket, and his response is, "That's not true." Well, Fritz finally is getting kind of to the end here, and he says, quote, "Lee, you know you've killed the president, and this is a very serious charge." Hoping to get him to stumble and say something. Calm as can be, says, "No, I haven't killed the president." And Fritz informs Oswald for the first time that the president's dead, because how would Oswald know that? He's been under lock and key, right? And he says, they will forget about him and have a new president in a few days. That's what Oswald says to Fritz. Well, at this point, Fritz doesn't think he's going to get much more out of Oswald. So who would he bring in to talk to next that might know a little bit about this Lee Harvey Oswald? Who worked with him every day?
Oh, the neighbor.
Buell Wesley Frazier brought it. Now, before I tell you about this, I want you to picture, how many of you kids in here are 18? How many are 19? Any chance anybody's 19? Okay, 18. You're 19? Okay. Buell Frazier was 19 years old. He was a little bit older than you. Can you imagine you being the one that gives the guy that kills the president a ride to work, and all of a sudden now you're in there being interrogated by the top interrogator in the Dallas Police Department? Would you be just a little bit oh my god-ish? I mean, that's the way Buell was. He was just 19 years old. Well, here's how it goes. During the interview, Frazier gives Captain Fritz the following 3 bits of information. This is what he tells him. He says, first of all, Frazier stated that on Friday morning, November 22nd, he was running late, and Lee Harvey Oswald walked down to the Randall residence and knocked on the door about 7:10. He went on to say that prior to his knocking on the door, Oswald had placed a package in the back seat of Buell's car. You know that because I told you that. And Buell answered the door and stated this. He said, quote, "And when I came out to get into the car, I glanced over and saw a package in the back seat. I said, 'What's that?' And he said, 'You remember, that's the curtain rods I was going to bring in.'" That's what he told Fritz. Now, according to Frazier, he told Fritz that that package fit between the palm of your hand here and your armpit, which is about how long? 2 feet. And what did Lenny May Randall tell him? 2 feet. Now, conspiracy theorists say, well, the rifle, you guys saw the rifle, was it 2 feet long? No, but it comes apart. The rifle comes apart, okay? Now, this is interesting because Buell Frazier told me this personally, and just recently in an interview that you're going to see today, he tells the story. This came right from Buell's own words. He told me, and I'm telling you. After the interview, Fritz handed Buell a paper and asked him to sign it. Well, normally, when you're interviewed, sometimes they will have you sign a paper that says everything you told me was true, right, or something to that effect. Well, Buell read this, and basically it was a confession that he was part of the assassination of John Kennedy. And Buell looked at that and read it, and he said, "I'm not signing this. I would never do anything like that. This document's ridiculous," and wouldn't sign it. According to Buell Frazier, Captain Fritz took a swing at him, and Frazier blocked the attempt to hit him in his arm, and he went on to tell Captain Fritz that if he hit him again, even though there were police out in the hallway, he'd be in for a hell of a fight. Now, I'm going to show you, before we continue our lecture, two short videos on Buell Frazier, so you can hear it. Now, I'm telling you, this poor guy, Buell has not lived a glamorous life since this time. It's been very difficult on him. You'll have to listen what he has to say. But he's 74 years old now, still working, doesn't have 2 pennies to rub together. This has not helped him in life, being in this situation. Now, does he go around and speak? Does he sign photos for people and find them on eBay later for 150 bucks a piece? I'm going to tell you a quick story. I convinced Buell, when he signs a signature to somebody, always put 2 Navy or 2 Carly, because nobody wants some signature that's written to somebody else. So they don't sell as good as if you leave it blank. And he started to do that. And I tell him, you know, another thing you need to do is when people you don't know ask you for an autograph, what should you do for it? Charge them for it. 25 bucks a piece. Because he does this all the kindness of his heart. And now he went to a book signing that day. It wasn't his book, but he was signing a book with his name in it. And they charged people for that. And he started to recoup that. He is in the process of publishing his own book. He's never told this story, you know, to the world. And his son Rob, who's a good friend of mine, is putting this together. And I think it'll be out within about 6 months. And when it does, I'll let you know, because it's a book you'll probably want. And if you wanted to buy a book from Buell after you graduate, because it won't be done, I'll eventually sign it for you and send it to you. But he needs to recoup a little bit here. But anyway, I want you to watch these. Ron, if you get the door, my man, and the lights.